Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Hello, my friends. It's Lynda, and welcome back for another episode of the Pilates Goddess podcast. Many of you know that I, at 56 years old, am solidly in menopause and actually went into an early menopause when I had a total abdominal hysterectomy due to endometriosis when I was 30. So I had a very rude menopause awakening, which literally involved getting a Lupron injection one day and waking up at 3:00 the next morning with a hot flash and running downstairs in the middle of winter and standing completely naked in front of an open refrigerator and freezer, which is how my husband found me and was absolutely shocked and kind of horrified. But, you know, it was going from full-on estrogen to no estrogen overnight. Luckily for most women, luckily or not luckily, I'm not sure actually, because at least with the rude awakening, you get it done and over. But for many women, they are, dealing with perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopause, which can go for a number of years. And minimally, I think usually around a year to begin with. So today I have on my friend Angie Garton, and Angie is a menopause coach, and she helps support both individuals and groups and offers menopause consultation services to businesses and organizations. Her goal is to help women feel like themselves again, or at least more like themselves again, while going through the menopause transition. Her drive and enthusiasm come from wanting to provide real support, not just information. And you are currently experiencing perimenopause, but Angie has actually been coaching women through menopause since before she was in menopause or perimenopause. Yep. So she has been part of the conversation and part of the increased awareness, the increased conversation around menopause in the last decade. And, she actually helps us feel positive and reassured and confident in our menopause transition, because it can make us feel really stuck and really overwhelmed and like we don't know who we are and don't know what we're doing. But with a coach, we can start to understand what's normal, what's natural, and things that we can do to help ourselves get through it. Angie also hosts the Finding Yourself in Menopause free Facebook group. And of course, there will be a link to that in the show notes. Angie is based in the UK. And I've known you for a solid chunk of those 10 years, have I not? So welcome, Angela.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for inviting me. It's really good to be able to talk about this.
Yes. And I know, we're having a lot of increased discussion about menopause here in the US as well. And it's interesting. Over the weekend, a woman who I follow, who also lives in New York, who's a writer, posted her official menopause day because she had tracked her not having her period for a solid year.
Oh gosh.
And wow. She was like, here I am. It's my birthday of the next transition and the next phase of my life in menopause. And she posted a photo of herself doing deadlifts
Brilliant.
At the gym. Yes. While celebrating this anniversary. So, menopause has typically not been celebrated.
Gosh, no, not at all. Well, it kind of depends where you live and how you've been brought up. Culture And different civilizations, of course, do have, there's a lot of differences around the world, but the general consensus is that it's not something to celebrate, it's something to hide from, something to feel shameful about, it's something to feel embarrassed and fearful of. It's been hidden away for far too long.
Right. But isn't that, I mean, it's kind of the case with all of women's life transitions. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we get our periods and no one really wants to hear about that.
Huh? Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, ew, we don't even know. And recently here in the States, they actually did kind of an on the street interview where they asked men of varying ages how women's periods worked.
Oh, wow.
And the majority of them had absolutely no idea.
No, I'm not surprised.
None whatsoever, which is kind of fascinating to me because, at least some of that is covered in health class,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether we
Some
choose
of
to
it.
remember it or not. I mean,
Yeah.
that was kind of pounded into my head like every year in health class, right? Was how these things worked.
Mm.
And so, we're taught not to really celebrate that. And then we're taught to not really celebrate the transition out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a big problem in that way to certainly I've found to position myself as a menopause coach, as somebody who's helping people through that often very difficult transition. In the early days of doing that, it was quite tricky to have those conversations, like me presenting myself as, I am what you need. When women do not want to talk about menopause, well, they didn't at the time. So that's been a huge change that I've seen since 2016, when I was first giving talks and speaking at exhibitions and things that and trying to start these conversations. Back in those days, people did not really want to engage because of that stigma around it. If we talk about menopause, then and start to talk about our own perimenopause, then we're kind of associating ourselves with that and accepting that we're there. And then because of the stigma around it, we're then saying, oh, right, so this is it then. It's all downhill from here, is it? Have I reached my peak? Is that it? And nobody wants to associate with themselves with that. So it can be changing. For me, it's been an interesting time of seeing these different discussions pop up and more definitely more prevalence in the conversations and just on the street. I mean, I can talk in cafes and different groups, and people rarely look shock horror these days, or when you start those conversations, but
Right.
they really did. Yeah. So it's been an interesting transition for me to see the change in how it's been viewed, that now we've got access to a bit more information. So that's been great, but also women are starting to, I think, as a collective, seeing the injustice of, why hasn't anybody told me about this before? This natural process that's going on in my body, or for some people, it's not, it's forced into it, like yourself. Why hasn't somebody explained to me about this before? And there's a real indignation around that, and rightly so. Rightly so.
Yeah. Now, what age do most women start experiencing perimenopause?
Well, yeah, that's a tricky one to answer, because our body starts to prepare for it in our 30s, but we're not going to feel that actually happening in a physical or a mental or emotional sense until our 40s.
So what's happening in our 30s?
In our 30s, our body is starting to adjust levels of hormones. So it's not, when we talk about hormones, we often think of estrogen is the big one that pops up, isn't it? Like that's the all important one that everyone talks about. But there's more to it than estrogen. There's a lot of different hormones that that are linked in with estrogen. We've got the progesterone, of course, the other, I think of them as two sisters, kind of doing opposite jobs in a way. Very different personalities and traits coming through with those, and their relationship changes over time, but they're also in the same family as the stress hormones as well. And then we've got testosterone, and then we've got the hormones that don't even sound like they've got anything to do with menopause at all. Insulin, for example, and neurotransmitters as well can sort of cross over and be affected by hormones. So in our 30s, we're seeing and not feeling, but we are starting to prepare biologically for some changes to levels of inflammation, to insulin and how that's processed and handled in the body. And other hormones like oxytocin will start to change, and how its relationship with us in the body. So, and all of those hormones and neurotransmitters are holding hands with estrogen. They're kind of, and progesterone as well. They're in that same family, if you like, that there's a change in one and you feel like a ripple down the line. It's not quite a domino effect because they're not falling flat on their face, thank goodness, but,
Right.
but there is a change that's passed down the line. So yeah, in our 30s, the body's preparing for that, and then it really does start to happen in our 40s. But hopefully we're not going to feel that until mid 40s. But for some women, they do feel it. They do feel it earlier.
Right. And then that explains, that was actually a great kind of explanation of how many of the hormones that we're dealing with and the complexity of them. And then that, I think, helps explain the different symptoms that women can get. Like sometimes they feel some kind of brain fog or, a little memory loss. That was another thing that I was kind of struggling with during the forced menopause pre-surgery, was forgetting like basic things, like to turn off the coffee machine.
Yeah.
Like some of them were kind of important basic things, writing down the check or or the ATM withdrawal that I just made, little things like that were just kind of not happening because I literally forgot them. Then I had right. Then the temperature fluctuations, which is always interesting. I think the thing that I had the longest lasting and that you helped me out with a lot last year and the year before was the night sweats.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Really common.
Yeah. And like long lasting. I mean, of everything, that was the one that I consistently had. And that's actually gone away.
Great. Oh, that's good. I'm so pleased to hear that.
Yes. Now, one thing that I hear a lot of complaints about for my clients, especially, but from women in menopause in general, is the extra few pounds and the extra few pounds around the belly.
Yeah. I hear this a lot too. Yeah.
Yes. And for me, I'm like, I don't even care anymore. An extra 10 pounds isn't gonna, ruin me either way.
Right. Yeah.
And I've always had a belly, so no matter how thin I've been. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, right. And you've done long distance running. You were also a personal trainer doing very heavy weight training. I mean, I remember all of this, and you still do your long distance runs and and all of that. And we still have a little bit more belly fat. Now, why is that?
Yeah, it can be really frustrating for a lot of women. I get this subject. I was going to say question but it's more a complaint than a question that people say to me, how do I manage this? How do I get rid of it? I just can't seem to get rid of it. What's going wrong? What am I not doing? Why is it was not changing? And I'm piling the pounds on, and I haven't changed how I'm eating, and I'm still exercising loads, and they are really cross, and it's a problem that I don't dismiss. I really listen to it, because not because I'm all about aesthetics, and I'm certainly not. I'm not the person to speak to about hair and nails and the external experience of ourselves. But what I totally understand is that change in perception of ourselves and our confidence levels and our identity, and how that's shifting, and how much that is tied in with how we look. And we don't want to change that, because we spent decades sort of building the bricks around that, looking after ourselves. And so, yeah, I take it very seriously when somebody's complaining around this belly fat thing. And the reason it happens is not a one sentence answer. There's several factors going on. So the first thing that's changing to make that happen is that we are less sensitive to insulin. So we need more insulin for it to do the same job in the body. And hopefully we've all got functioning levels of insulin without being diabetic. That's a separate conversation in itself. I'm just talking about the average healthy person here. So insulin is really important for keeping us alive, of course, but for many different things of energy management. And when we are getting through perimenopause and getting ourselves through it, and it's a very normal and natural process for this to occur, that we are less sensitive to insulin. Having more circulating insulin for it to do the same job, and just having it at that slightly higher level, it's having an impact on blood sugar levels and cortisol. And we often hear, I'm sure it's over there in the US as well, over in the UK, we talk about this thing of cortisol belly, the stress belly.
Yes.
It's quite, it's a bit of a derogatory term. I'm not that much in love with it, but it is kind of true that there is stress levels that are piling on. And for a few different reasons, when we're stressed, we're more likely to keep that weight around the belly. So that's one or a couple of factors there. And also being more prone to the effects of inflammation with all of the various changes in hormones, including estrogen, because estrogen being anti-inflammatory. So having less of it means that we've got a higher level of inflammation. Having more circulating insulin means that we've got a higher level of inflammation. All these different factors. We are stressed out from not sleeping and having those hot flushes, and stressed out from feeling out of control, and these surges in whether it's temperature or anger or irritability. There's lots of things that can feel like they're totally out of your control, and that can have an effect as well, obviously, on the balance of all of those hormones that I've just mentioned, and make us more prone to gaining weight around the belly, and then making it harder to lose it as well.
Right. And that's also I think the explanation for why, when we kind of do what we did when we were younger, which is eat less and exercise more.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's, what we know. That's what we were always told would help us with the weight loss or the belly fat loss.
Yeah.
That actually leads once again to greater levels of inflammation in the body, and also greater levels of inflammation, because a lot of us in lowering our calories
Yeah.
are actually going way below kind of what we need to
Yeah.
have as a minimum. And I look at my clients sometime and I'm like, there is no reason for you to ever eat less than 1,200 calories a day.
Oh gosh,
Like
no.
never, ever, ever. And in fact, that's super low. So,
Yeah.
um, so it's kind of funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it is kind of funny that all the strategies that we're taught for our entire lives, we get to
Yeah.
this place in our lives and suddenly none of those strategies are
Absolutely.
actually effective anymore.
Yeah, yeah, we've got to rethink the whole thing. You know that saying of, do the same thing, expect the same results. It's madness. It really is, because menopause, it's not just about estrogen and it's not just about hot flashes. It's an entirely different blueprint for health and well-being. And everything that we've learned and thought about as being normal, and I do X and I get Y, whether that's for migraines or weight or anything, all of that needs adjusting. It's not like we haven't changed species, we're still women. We don't throw out the entire roadmap towards health, but it needs adjusting. It is different. It is very different.
Yeah. Now, I know that you speak a lot about what we need to be including in our diet on a
Mm,
daily basis, and the foods, not just that help nourish us, but that will really help kind of nourish us through the transition. And I also know that you're a big believer in the eating of whole foods.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And not just the kind of juicing or smoothie or whatever, although those can be fine, in the short term.
Yeah.
Um, I've always found the whole juicing phenomenon to be very strange. I have to tell you, I always have. It's always struck me that there's so much nutrition and so much fiber in the pulp
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
fruits and veggies that we're not getting when we turn them into juice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That, it's almost like as somebody who has been anorexic and exercise bulimic
Uh-huh.
in her life, I can speak to the fact that it just sounds like a very anorexic way of getting fruits and vegetables in,
Yeah. Yeah.
and very expensive way of trying to get the nutrients in. So what is it that we really need to be focused on in terms of really nourishing ourselves and helping balance out the hormones through good food choices?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And gosh, we could be here all night talking about that, because there's a lot that we can do to help ourselves um, through food. And the first thing that pops into my mind with just talking about juicing is the fiber, because this is the time of life when we need more fiber than we have ever eaten in our lives, not less. Not taking it out as a juice. I mean, juicing is okay, but not as a way of life, not as a diet, but the odd juice if you like the taste of it, rather than thinking of it as this is going to solve all my problems. We need fiber. We need the fiber. So lots and lots of variety in plants and vegetables is the first thing on the list when it comes to hormonal balance using food. Yeah,
Interesting. And it's also helps lower the cholesterol.
it does. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
does. Yeah,
So fiber is really kind of key.
yeah,
So
yeah,
lots of greens, lots of leafy, lots of cruciferous, lots of
yeah. And more of the vegetables and the plants that are classed as vegetables rather than fruits. And I think it can be easy to overeat on fruit when we're eating fruit as a snack. I try to be careful how I talk about this because it can sound like I'm like anti-fruit, and I'm definitely not. But if we're going to have fruits, it would be best to have those with a meal rather than, having them in between meals and messing up our blood sugar again, and then that can create problems with anything from anxiety to more brain fog even, and hot flashes again. So yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's interesting. A few episodes ago, I did an interview with a guy who was one of our doctors when we were in Turks and Caicos, Sam Slattery, who also works with the NHS and with your NHS. and and he was saying how, a big part of the issue with Western culture, especially, and food right now, is we keep going through these phases of feeling like, well, every once in a while we'll get like you need to snack all the time and keep your blood sugar up
Yeah,
like all the time kind of situation.
yeah.
And, Sam was like, only in a world where we have way too much access to food and way too much access to sugary food would that even come up. He
True.
was like,
Yeah,
in our history, no,
yeah,
no, that never happened because we never had that much access to food. You were
yeah.
lucky if you ate twice a day
Yes.
and you just ate as much of the like foraged food and the killed food as you could
Yeah, yeah.
during those twice a day times. And then you hoped for the best for the next day. And
Mm.
that's how that went. Um, And I remember, even a few years ago, there was a whole belly fat diet and they encouraged you to eat every 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. You see, a 20, 22-year-old woman would probably get away with that. 42, 52, 62-year-old is not going to. That's going to have the opposite effect. And our metabolism does change, of course, as we get older, and lots of things tie into that. And some people feel as they get older, some people feel better on smaller meals more often. But as a way of managing perimenopause and even postmenopause, I would say it's it's far better to try to utilize our systems as a whole of what they're trying to do. And yeah, trying to have I always try to encourage and talk to my clients and have that conversation of what do 3 meals a day look like? Is that possible to have those without snacks? I mean, it depends on what their job is like, their activity levels, kind of exercise as well, all comes into it. But for managing symptoms, for feeling more ourselves, yeah, I'm definitely on the side of 3 meals if we can. Definitely including breakfast in that. I'm not a big fan of skipping breakfast, and trying to avoid snacks where possible.
Now it's interesting because, of course, intermittent fasting has been kind of on the radar,
Mm,
especially here for the past few years. And we have every version from um, eat all you want for 5 days and then don't eat for two,
yeah.
or don't skip breakfast and don't start eating till later in the day and then just eat in, an 8 hour window, which, I think if you're fitting 3 meals, including breakfast in that, 8 to 10 hour window, that's probably within reason the way humans have eaten, because you're eating and then you're taking maybe 14 hours off and you're sleeping for part of that,
Mm, yeah.
right? Um, and that's the old, even if you eat breakfast at 7 or 8 in the morning when you get up, and you eat your last meal around 6 or 7 at night, and then it's just a matter of not, eating after that. Even Jane Fonda used to talk about that. She just used to say, just don't eat after 8 and you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's not completely new.
right. But then we, of course, have the folks who go to extremes with it. And this is what I'm seeing a lot of online in different groups that I'm in of women over 50 is people veering more towards, say, the Jack Dorsey from Twitter version of, I only eat 1 out of every 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me worried. Yeah, I'm concerned at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, why is that not? I mean, I feel like it should be obvious why that's not good, but explain why that's not good for folks who may not see it as obvious.
Yeah, we're not the same as men. Number one, we're not the same as men. It might work for some people, but menopause as a whole is a stressful time for your body. I mean, it's stressful anyway, mentally for a lot of people, but physically, biologically, your body's going through a lot of changes. There's a lot of transition happening internally and often externally. And to limit your calorie intake and your not just calorie intake, but nutritional intake, and limit that to a very small window, we are going to be putting huge pressure on body systems which regulate and manage that whole hormonal transition, let alone ovulation. If we're stressing all of that, we're going to be setting ourselves up for some problems, whether they come the next day or the next year. I'm not happy on a
Right.
one day.
Now, you talk a lot about seeds.
Yeah.
And I know, here it's like seeds sort of came back a little bit during, like the chia pudding
Oh yeah.
times. But in general, why are seeds and seed oils good for us?
Yeah, we've got a huge range of seeds available to us. So we're talking anything from the chia and the pumpkin seeds to sesame, even sprouted seeds. So things like red clover. There's a huge amount of nutritional availability within any of those seeds. And we're talking about minerals as well as vitamins and that all important fiber as well within the casing. So we've also got this magic thing called the phytoestrogens, the plant forms of estrogen, which are very weak forms of similar estrogen that our own body makes. So we can't really compare it like for like and say, I'm going to eat enough seeds to replace the estrogen that I'm losing from menopause. Right. It doesn't quite work like that, but it does provide us with a lot of different, very important minerals, the B vitamins, things like zinc and even calcium, manganese. We could be here all night listing them all. They're all available in those seeds, and there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be eating them every day.
Yeah. Now, let's look at exercise for a second, because we've discussed the fact that, going into all of let's just do the high intensity exercise and that'll take care of everything like it used to 20 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But, I even found for myself that engaging in kind of high intensity exercise every day or even every other day became too much. I was sore all the time. I was tired all the time. And I wasn't actually getting the changes in my body that, one would expect if one is doing that kind of work. Which I found actually kind of annoying.
Sure.
But the beauty of it was that when I really looked at it as a, trained professional, I realized I could go two ways with that. Number one was to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing on that and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And then I thought, would you do that for your clients? Right? Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I have to ask myself that.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
Lynda, would you tell your clients to do that? Absolutely not. Would I
Hmm.
tell my clients to do that? And that's kind of my first step is I'm like, okay, so I probably shouldn't tell myself to do that.
Yeah.
But that when I moved instead to doing more moderate exercise on a daily basis, and I kind of work that how I feel in the day.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, if I wake up and I'm sort of feeling a little, then maybe I'm doing some yoga and Pilates. I'm starting my day with that. I'm just getting some the stretching and movement in. And then if I'm having a day when I'm feeling, really like moving and being a little stronger, then maybe I'm doing some cardio, lightweight training,
Mm,
um, bands or whatever else. And I found that that actually has as positive an effect
yes.
as doing more used to. But it's probably the biggest fight that I have with my clients
Mm,
who are over 50. Like I was talking to a woman on Thursday who's a potential new client. And I said, it's not that I think you're exercising too much necessarily. It's that you're not allowing your body to recover.
yeah.
And by not allowing your body to recover, you are just causing more and more and more inflammation.
You don't get the benefits if you don't allow that recovery time. You're constantly
Right.
under stress
And
physically.
estrogen helps us recover, right?
Yes.
As a major anti-inflammatory. So it takes us a little bit longer to recover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're doing something, say we end up doing something high intensity, we go on a big hike, we go on a big bike ride, we do our thing, you go for a long distance run or do a half marathon or whatever you're doing, then maybe it's 3 or 4 days after that you need to be mellow instead of 1 to 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just that, but I would need to think about, okay, I'm not going to go out to the party afterwards and drink loads of alcohol. And I'm not going to eat a ton of cake and crisps and, all of the rubbish to celebrate what I've just done. I need to recover physically in lots of different ways. I need the extra sleep. I need the gentle exercise and the walks, not pushing it immediately afterwards when I feel like, oh yeah, I could work a bit harder today. No, no, back off. Give yourself a
Right.
breather. And it pays off.
It does. Now,
Yeah.
since you mentioned it, I think we need to bring up alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Now, I've really found, and it's probably easier for me now because marijuana is legal in New York City. It is legal in New York State. And for me personally, I have always preferred that to alcohol. My
Right.
body does not deal with the alcohol sugar well. I don't
Mm.
sleep well and I feel crappy. Um, so if I need like a little mellow thing at the end of my day, now I can do that. I don't have to worry about the legalities of
Yeah.
that. And I do feel like it's a lot easier on my system. I'm
Uh-huh.
not,
Yeah.
globally talking about anybody else.
Mm.
But alcohol feels like it disrupts my body on a very major level. Even just one drink, even during the day, like with food.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Right. So, what is it about alcohol that does that?
It's basically the fact that it is a big source of toxin. It's a big toxin and it's sugar as well. So there's a lot there for your liver to deal with and a lot for your brain to cope with as well afterwards. But this is a really common issue that I find this is one of the hardest topics of conversation I have with clients because alcohol at this time of our lives has become a bit of a crutch. It's not like we're not talking about it being a real problem. They're not excessively drinking, but they are using it as a way of relaxing in the evenings, as a a way of socializing, very normal, very acceptable. And using and drinking, or shouldn't say using, that sounds wrong, but drinking alcohol has become a part of their regular activities in how they enjoy themselves. And their body has coped with that for a long time, and it's been fine. And then, like yourself, they're finding it creeps up on them that it becomes a problem. It's not a source of joy anymore. It becomes a source of stress because, just one or two glasses is very disruptive. It is a toxin that your body is taking in. And whenever we do that, a toxin, I know it's odd to think of something that tastes so nice as a toxin, but your body has to cope with that and prioritize dealing with it and cleaning it and getting rid of it quickly. And when it's doing that, it's putting aside all of the hormonal jobs that need to be done and all of the regular cleaning work that it would normally do to keep you healthy and well and fully functioning. So it's prioritizing, as it rightly should, cleaning up the alcohol first. And when it's doing that, we're going to feel that as all sorts of different things, but hot flashes are more likely, disrupted sleep, definitely. We're going to feel it the next day and probably the day after that as well. There can be, it can trigger other hormonal symptoms, anything from anxiety to mood swings, all sorts of things can happen there. And then there's the sugar element as well. So it's a real problem for the body to have to deal with, and it's a real problem I've found for people that I've spoken to. For not everyone, but quite commonly, it's a problem to let go of that because it's been such a source of joy over the years. It's really hard to accept that your body doesn't tolerate it anymore. And that's tricky. That can be really tricky. But there are, of course, there are some really good non-alcoholic drinks out there. And that can be, some people find that they gravitate towards those and that's like a really good switch around. Some people really don't like it because it just doesn't live up to the promise of what they've been used to. It doesn't allow them to relax, and it leads them to question what they're doing then for self-care, for taking time out for themselves, for relaxing, for socializing. It can be really uncomfortable to start questioning those things about ourselves, but there's a lot of value in that it can really sort of nudge us or shove us for some people. It gives us a big shove into questioning those things about ourselves and really taking those problems, picking them apart and reorganizing those thoughts in our own head so that we can come to terms with what's going on and make the decisions that we need to make for ourselves. And there's no blanket approach for this. It really is very individual.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of it is taking stock and taking note of how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And then you're not, it's not necessarily a value judgment. It just is. Absolutely. It's like, yes, I would love to be able to have mimosas at brunch, but that leaves me not feeling well. So maybe I'll enjoy my brunch and, not do that. But it doesn't, again, have to be this imposed decision. And that's really what I love about you and your work, Angie, is that you basically encourage your clients, whether it's those of us in your free group or the clients who are paying you, to really get in touch with our own bodies, our own selves, and go from there and go with what really does make us feel and function better, which, has always been my approach to exercise.
Yeah.
With my clients.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best place for them to go?
Gosh, lots of places. I'm on all the socials, apart from Twitter, I think. So Facebook, I'm very active on Facebook. You'll see me there almost every day, pretty much every day. So you can find me there at Angie Garton, or you can follow and have a look at my business page, the Finding Yourself in Menopause. Then there's the YouTube. I'm there with my own name, Angie Garton, on that one. And then, of course, the free Facebook community as well. There's a lot of different conversations every week. There's something else being asked, and lots of really brave people sharing what's going on for them in that group. So I'm really proud of everyone. There's almost 1,200 women in there now, and really valuable, and obviously putting lots of advice and guidance in there as well, so it's easily accessible for everyone.
Great. And of course, the links to the Facebook group and to all of your social will be in the show notes. And then finally, everybody, if you are interested in talking more with Angie, and I highly encourage you to do so, she is offering a free 20-minute consultation, which is completely confidential, to provide some quick and effective answers to some of your common questions about low energy, sleep issues, emotional issues, motivational issues, and weight gain, pretty much everything we talked about today. And I will post the link for you to just go over to Angela's Calendly and schedule your free 20-minute talk with her if you would like to learn more about managing your menopause. So thank you so much, Angie. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me on. It has been good fun. It's always good to have a chat.
Yes, it's always good to have a chat with you. So everybody, once again, thank you so much for joining us. And if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm encouraging you one more time to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a rating, and if you can, a written review. And I will talk to you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.